everyone, and welcome back to another video. Please do not mind my hair right now. I know it is like a little crusty and dry on this side. It is very close to my wash day, and I of course have myself scheduled to do a video right in between a wash day. So I feel like I keep doing this, like I'm scheduling videos on days that I'm not having freshly washed or super curly hair. I've been traveling for the last week and life has to keep moving, things have to get done, so here we are. I've been dying to do this. I am very excited to dive into kind of what my experience has been so far in the recruiting TA world, and also give you my pros and cons to it, because a lot of you guys have a lot of questions about TA and how you can get into TA, how you can get into being a recruiter, what the career path looks like. And so I would love to kind of dig deep into that a little bit and give you my personal experience to the recruiting side of human resources. I wanted to give you my definition of what a talent acquisition specialist is and what that means. And so typically a talent acquisition specialist is a sector of the HR world who is someone that specifically looks for people to match a very specialized skill set. So for example, I myself work in the construction industry. A lot of what I hire for are estimators and project managers of all levels. And typically what we're looking for, especially in my industry specifically, I'm in the specialty construction world. So I have to find very specific candidates for very specific skills. So for my estimator and project managers, a lot of our PMs actually also estimate, which is, I know, very confusing, but I have it down pack. I know saying that out loud is probably confusing, but I am looking for people that have on-screen takeoff, who have quick bid, who are familiar with the commercial construction world, who have estimated and worked in certain just scopes of Division 9, construction, project management, things like that. And so it gets very deep into the niche. I think a recruiter, because I do work with another TA specialist, but I think he does more recruitment in the sense of he's finding people who are qualified enough to actually just fill the open roles that we have. So he does a lot of our field. So I think our field definitely needs a recruiter. And then for our specialized positions, there should be a talent acquisition taking that on. Every company does have their own definition of it. I know each of you all in the TA recruiting world probably have your own definitions of what you do in your day-to-day, but that's just a generalized scope that I can think of what that looks like. So to kind of answer the first question before dipping into my pros and cons, I've seen a lot of comments recently about how I got into recruiting. So to touch back way back when I started in HR, I was actually an HR admin assistant. I had not ever touched recruiting before in my life. I jokingly always said that I never wanted to be a recruiter because I felt like it took a very special type of person to deal with that. And I just felt like it wasn't for me. And I strictly just wanted to stick more into the operations side of the human resources world. I know I've mentioned before, but part of why I wanted to come back to corporate is because in the industry that I do work in, corporate is a little bit more set versus working in the field where you are susceptible to layoffs the minute that a job is no longer needed and you don't have guys working in the field and there's just not a need for you. In the construction world, I do believe that the workers and the field guys and project managers, branch managers, everybody else is the reason why I even have a role here, because without them and the need and the bid that they're doing on those projects, there's really not a need for me. There's not really a need for HR. There's not a need for any of us. So it's very comfortable and nice for me personally. I do like having a consistent paycheck and knowing what I'm going to get paid. That is why I chose to stick with corporate HR. I knew that I did not want to go back to field. I was actually offered to come back to the field with one of my positions, and I was like, absolutely not. I am not coming back to that. You guys drove me nuts. And it was a great experience, but I am going to leave that experience behind and call it a day, and we're just done with it. So to kind of dive into a couple of my pros and cons, I really wanted to start with the pros first, because I feel like the cons, there's so much deepness into that to dive into, and I definitely have explanations for each of my cons, and it's just gonna take a second. So my first pro is the significance that I feel in being able to help somebody else fulfill their passion, their dream, by giving them a position that they so badly want. And I do think that it is great to be a corporate recruiter and have the connections that I have, because even if something does not work out here, I can always send a resume over or a LinkedIn profile candidate over to another recruiter that I am working with. And so I really enjoy that aspect of helping somebody fill their need, find their roles. I work with a lot of entry level positions as well, aside from some of my senior roles. And I get so excited when a candidate who is now a new hired employee tells me how grateful they are because this was the start of their career after college. And I have a very big heart for that because I know that when I graduated college, I was definitely in their shoes in undergrad, trying to come into the big world of the corporate life. And I remember my first job, I was a market coordinator making $17.35 an hour. And I actually loved it. I had moved back home and it was just like my foot in the door to a corporate life and getting some experience to really translate my skills into, continuing my HR realm of my career. So nothing truly makes me feel better than when someone is so grateful and appreciative of my help, even if they, again, don't get filled with one of our roles. And I love being able to send them over to another recruiter where they have a spot to fill and there's that need there as well. So I just have a lot of excitement when it comes to that. My second is the fact that I get to make my own schedule pretty much. So I do work at standard hours, right? My hours are 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. And with setting my own hours, that's really just my hours of availability when it comes to recruiting and interviewing. So I get to schedule my week out the way that I want to. I get to interview on very specific days, and my team pretty much knows not to bother me on those days. It's a way to create boundaries. I do have deadlines for projects and things like that. So of course I have the freedom to kind of manipulate my schedule and my weeks based on what's due. Another one of my pros is the pay and commissions aspect to recruiting. For corporate recruiting, I don't exactly get commissions, but I know that if you're working for a staffing agency as a recruiter there, then there's commission-based eligibility. The growth and the amount of money you can make in recruiting alone is exponential. For tech recruiters, you definitely have to be a little bit careful because of the constant layoffs. Usually recruiters are the first to go. So I do like the pay aspect. I do think that I'm compensated pretty well for the role and for the day-to-day duties that I have. I know that my 1-year review is coming up. My 6 months already went really well, so I'm excited to see what comes out of that. But I think the pay for anyone that's trying to build a career, even if you don't want to pursue a college degree and you want to continue moving up in your role, I think recruiting is a great way to go. 2 other pros that I have for the TA role that I'm in now is that I feel like my role does present me with unique challenges. I've mentioned before that I struggled in the beginning with getting some engagement from hiring managers because HR is such a new concept to them. I knew this coming in and I did have my frustrations, but it's been such a rewarding thing for me to build out processes, to work with the managers, to train them. This is not my scope of expertise. I've only been a recruiter or a corporate recruiter for about 9 months now. And I just don't think I am the know-all for it. So it's been a lot of fun actually getting to challenge myself. And I think with recruiting in general, it's going to present challenges. You meet very interesting people. You get very interesting emails and phone calls. And when somebody's upset, you get very interesting things. So it's challenging you in ways to also improve some of your communication if you're not a confrontational person, if you don't like conflict and confrontation, really teaching you how to handle that. And that's severely taking me out of my box. Skill development is one of my favorite things that I can say is a pro to recruiting. I struggled in the past a lot with project management, sometimes with tasks and keeping tasks on go and feeling super overwhelmed and, things like that. I've gotten a lot better with that, managing my schedule and switching up how I do things because HR is not, a day-to-day as an HR specialist is very different from a day-to-day to a TA specialist. I do enjoy getting to meet new people, getting to travel, and getting to learn just more about what's out there. Now I would like to dive into the cons of being a talent acquisition specialist or a recruiter. And these again are my personal experiences of what I have found to be my cons with recruiting. For some of you guys, it may not be that, but again, I'm just sharing from my perspective. To start, one of my cons with recruiting has to be working with managers who are not willing to evolve, who are not willing to change, who are not willing to train, even in the most entry-level role, which that's another story for another day about how I feel about that. Something that I found as a challenge, but that's also a constant with the HR side as well, is that typically you do get blamed for a lot of things. And it is very normal for managers to easily blame things on the recruiter when it comes to the type of talent that you're finding, when it comes to longevity and how long it's taking to fill a position. There's definitely a lot of conversation around that. I feel like I am in some cases constantly having to defend myself. Something that hasn't really changed from the HR side either. I think as an HR generalist and specialist, I'm always having to track, and I was always having to track and manage conversations, what I was discussing with managers. It is very common that you can meet with a manager one-on-one doing an intake meeting for a position, and then they will go and tell another manager or their VP or my HR leader a completely different story. That's happened to me a couple of times here, if I'm being honest and transparent in this conversation. I do create bonds a lot of times with some of the people that I am interviewing. It doesn't happen often, but sometimes if I'm really rooting for someone and I want them to fill this role so bad because I see so much potential in them, and I'm like putting my nails into the chalkboard of like trying my hardest to get a hiring manager to buy into, this person, and they pass on them, it's really, really hard for me to tell them that we're going to have to move forward with somebody else. And I say it doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't mean to say that it is something that, I just don't care about any candidates that come through. But sometimes you get people who are they just really reel you in. And even on paper, they're just like the greatest candidate that you could see filling this role and really growing, and the managers don't want to move forward with them. Even if they don't want to move forward, but say they're putting a hold on the position, it's like you feel so horribly guilty. There's a lot of guilt in this position for me sometimes personally, because I do create bonds with some of the candidates, and I'm like, dang it, okay. And of course, I'm going to have the conversation and be honest and let them know, we're passing because of this, and this is what we saw in another candidate that we didn't see, and that they didn't see in you. Or if the role is closing, then I'll let them know. But it is something that's like really, really hard for me. It gives me so much anxiety, and I'm still working through that. Is definitely a con for me. Aside from me stating that I do enjoy as a pro getting to work my own schedule, are going to be sometimes the late nights that you have as a recruiter or TAS, simply because on a full day of recruiting, you have to close out notes, send notes to managers, send your follow-ups, and sometimes I can stay online as late as 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and then getting up again by 6 a.m. to get ready for my day to do it all over. It can get really exhausting and draining, and someone can easily burn out from a position like this. The competition right now in the job market in general, we are constantly looking at numbers, at pay scales, at what other companies are doing, at what they're offering, what their benefits look like, because it is so competitive in the job market. Even if you are a staffed agency recruiter, you're still dealing with the same stuff, because you're competing with other agencies, you're competing with the corporate recruiter that's probably on site, and you're also competing with the fact that pay scales are constantly changing, expectations are constantly changing. Your candidate may say they want 150. The role is very reduced to maybe 3 companies that are only offering that 150K as a senior, PM role, base salary, 30%, bonus structure, and you're trying to get that win. And so even for myself, I love partnering with the external recruiters that I do enjoy working with at our company, but it can get a little bit competitive. I mean, there have been times when they'll send me 3 people for a location, and I'm like, hold on, let me see what I got going on. Let me do some sourcing. Let me actually change my schedule for Thursday, block off the afternoon so I can source from Miami. Like, how are you finding these people? Like, let me find somebody too. And that doesn't go to say that I'm never gonna not push their candidates forward, because I do love utilizing external recruiters. At my company, we're a team of 2. And it's just me doing, 12 to 18 roles that are open for project managers. And that can get really overwhelming. So sometimes it's nice to have a pool, especially in hard areas. But sometimes it does drive me like, oh, you got 3? Let me figure out if I can at least get 1 to your 3, or 2 to your 3, or match it at 3 to 3. So there is a lot of competition in the recruiting world. I just think the market is constantly ever evolving, especially working multi-states. There's a lot to keep up with. I will have candidates that are applying for project manager roles, and they're like, well, at this company, they're offering me 150. And I'm like, yeah, you applied to a role where that's like at 90, 95. Like, we're definitely not there with it. Or their PTO structure, or their benefits, they're getting sign-on bonuses. So we're always having to compete, not only with other recruiters and other companies, but just with the constant change in market. Their rent is going up, mortgages are going up. Like, Netflix it's constantly changing every month. We're getting a new bill that Netflix is now $10 more than it was the month before. Like, there are so many things happening, so we're constantly having to keep up with the market and drive with numbers and salary and things like that to stay competitive. Another con that I need to address, and it doesn't exactly pertain to my actual position in my day-to-day, but when you are a recruiter publicly on LinkedIn, or you talk about recruiting on any social media platform, because not everybody recruits the same and not everybody has the same ideology to recruitment, you are always going to be grouped with that, and people are always going to have something to say to you. So if they have a negative experience somewhere else with another recruiter or a group of recruiters or several recruiters, you automatically get grouped into that. For example, ghosting. Whenever a candidate gets ghosted, you are automatically tied to the fact that you're a recruiter and you're gonna ghost me, which is so annoying because I feel like I'm always having to say, like, that's not exactly how I do things. I actually do take the time out of my day to sit down for hours just to send emails and follow up updates, because I personally don't like to be ghosted or would want to be ghosted. And even as a recruiter, we do get ghosted by really good candidates. They just don't talk to you. It goes both ways. And it's like, you're always going to be grouped into the negative. Like, we can't have a world for ourselves. The other day I saw a funny meme on LinkedIn, and it was a meme about this girl who was like, I had interviewed someone, told them that the position was on site. They said they were good with it by the third interview, and it was the last interview and they were actually going to put out an offer. They responded and were like, actually, I think I want something remote. And it was like, ugh, like, you know, the feeling. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can relate to this so much. And in the comments, people were like, yeah, well, recruiters just lie to us, and recruiters this and this, and this and that. And the girl was like fighting for her life. Like, I don't know what recruiters you work with, but I'm not like that. And it is so true. Like, you get grouped into the most negative things. People feel the need to tell you on TikTok, on YouTube, how much they don't like HR, how much they don't like recruiters. It's like, you don't even know me. That's literally judging a book by its cover. People just have so much to say, and they take their aggression and their anger out based on their own experiences out on you when you had nothing to do with them. You don't even know these people. Y'all need to be taking that up with the people that are interviewing you and giving that feedback to their higher ups. I work in HR and TA, and I have definitely done that before. I have other friends who work in the HRTA world also who have called out bad eggs. And so I think it's totally fair. So it's so annoying that it gets dumped on you when you reveal that you're in the recruiting or HR world. So that is definitely, I could write a book on that because it happens to me all the time. Something that I found as a con, I'm gonna call this a disadvantage, is that I am not used to not having access to everything. So coming from the HR side, when you come from HR to a talent acquisition specialist, you no longer have access to employee information or data or anything like that. I know that this varies. So before anybody jumps down my throat about it and anyone tries to, say anything in the comments, I've worked for companies where the TA specialists, not the recruiters and recruited coordinators, but at least the TA specialists and TA managers have access to everything on the HR side. And then I've had companies where people believe that it should be something separate and they shouldn't have access to employee information like salary and things like that, which I think can go both ways. Like, I get it because you don't want people knowing how much somebody else makes for certain reasons and, just to keep in line with everything. But I think that when you sign up to be a recruiter or a talent acquisition specialist, it's just kind of expected that, that people are going to make more than you. Yeah. I would say that those are definitely going to be all of my pros and cons to date about how I feel when it comes to being a talent acquisition specialist. I would like to revisit this conversation again in March when I reach my year to see kind of everything come full circle and where I'm at that time, and give you guys a more updated kind of feel of what I think are, again, my pros and cons, my advantages, disadvantages to recruiting and talent acquisition. But that is everything for this video. That's all that I have for you guys, and that's all that I wanted to share and talk about today. Please leave below in the comments what you guys think are your pros and cons to recruiting and what you think could really improve or help you in your day-to-day. I would love to know what some of your companies may be practicing. Of course, don't put any confidential information down below. If there's anything that you guys practice that you feel that has helped with improvement, that has added value to your day-to-day in your role, then please feel free to share that with me. But other than that, that is all that I have for this video. I hope that you guys have a great day, and I will see you all on the next one. Thanks. Bye.